Oh, hi, I'm Peggy Shepard. I'm Executive Director and co-founder of WEACT for Environmental Justice. And we got started back in 1988 around the issues of pollution in the West Harlem community. We began a number of organizing campaigns to address some of the pollution issues that were making people sick. Our first issue was around the North River sewage treatment plant. There were odors and emissions that were emanating from the plant, making people sick, exacerbating asthma in children. And then a second campaign was when we discovered that we house over 1/3 of the city's diesel bus fleet in uptown neighborhoods. And so we went to court to sue the Metropolitan Transit Authority for building another depot in the community without an environmental impact statement. What really happened was that we were able to educate the community and raise the visibility of environmental exposures and health outcomes. And so in that intervening 30 years, we have a very informed, trained community that is aware of these issues. Some of the more emerging issues over the last few years have been the issues of climate justice and energy security. And so we have really been working to organize residents. We took almost 200 residents to the People's Climate March in Washington, D.C. last month. We had about 100 people out at the New York City Climate March a couple of years ago. And so we have been able to develop a very strong membership base of about 400, 500 residents who come out in monthly meetings every month, and who have developed working groups around many of our campaigns so that they are community-led and community-directed. And I think having an informed, trained community mobilized and ready to engage in environmental decision-making is really what's changed over the last 30 years. And it didn't take 30 years to get there. But in looking back, that is certainly something of key value. Air quality was probably our first major issue that we engaged the community around, and it continues to be an issue today. More recently, again, climate change. We had Hurricane Sandy here in New York City that devastated many of the public housing developments and private houses that were near the waterfront. In New York City, there's been a history and a legacy of public housing being situated on the waterfront. And so in a lot of communities, waterfront residences are elite areas, but here in New York City, they're often lower income neighborhoods. Our campaign really focused on environmental racism when we first began, because we understood that the North River plant, which was our first campaign, originally was sited for the West 70th Street area. And a number of developers were able to lobby the City Planning Commission to move the plant further, to move the plant somewhere, and that somewhere became West Harlem. And so the plant was sited here, constructed here, and it's one of the 14 sewage treatment plants in New York City, but it is the plant that is closest to people's homes of any plant here in the city. And Mayor Koch assured us that there was the proper odor control and maintenance going on the plant. But when David Dinkins became borough president and mayor, we realized that that was not the case, that there was, in fact, no odor equipment in place at that plant, which was closest to people's homes. And David Dinkins, when he got into office, said there's a problem and we're going to fix it. I think there's always been a challenge to environmental justice organizations headed by people of color working to address issues in communities of color. So nothing has changed really for us. It's always been a struggle. because we're within an environment portfolio that really focuses on the very big green groups that are very well resourced, that have, you know, annual operating budgets of over $100 million a year. And so the foundations look at their effectiveness and continue to support them. So it's been a struggle for us to be in that same category and receive the kind of funding we need to do our work. So we've been certainly moderately successful. We probably are one of the largest, best known environmental justice organizations in the country. We overachieve with the small funding that we do have. But we do have a budget of about $2 million. We have 17 staff. We have an office here in Harlem as well as a small office in Washington, D.C. to work on federal policy. So it is challenging, but I think some of the foundations are beginning to hire people of color who understand what working in a community is about, who understand what working in a nonprofit is about, and the kind of resources that you really need to do that work. And so things are, I don't want to say they're getting easier, but we are getting more acceptance. For a number of years, we've been engaged in a Healthy Homes campaign because we understand that indoor air quality is key to our health, because most of us, certainly children and the retired or elderly, spend more time indoors than anywhere else. And then, of course, you have other indoor environments where children are spending a great deal of their time, whether it's schools or daycare centers or even their grandparents' home. So that we understand that pests and other kinds of allergens that you find indoors, also impacts from consumer products, chemicals in consumer products that are used indoors, all really accumulate to impact health in our homes. And so we have been working with a citywide coalition to develop an asthma-free homes bill that we hope to have a hearing on the first week of June this year. And we are really hoping that we can get the mayor's support on a bill that would make landlords responsible for abating certain indoor allergens if there is a family that has a diagnosis of asthma who are living within that landlord's building. Well, we certainly have had some successes, and the community has been successful in achieving things like the West Harlem Waterfront Park, which we organized 200 residents to develop a vision for that waterfront, which was dilapidated. It was a parking lot. The piers had fallen into the water, and we were able to develop a strong community vision and get the city to build it. And so that park opened several years back. We were able to develop a community-based planning process for a bus depot over at Esplanade Gardens in Central Harlem. There's a huge depot right literally in front of a middle-income housing project that has probably over 1,000 households. We developed over a 6-year period of time a community task force that held the Metropolitan Transit Authority's feet to the fire, and now there is a renovated bus depot with every bus indoors instead of outdoors idling, creating a pollution problem. And we had the community really get the MTA to develop that building as a LEEDs-rated building. And LEEDs is a designation when a building has developed a number of green considerations and green construction elements. And so we've probably got the first LEEDs-rated bus depot in the country right in central Harlem. And it's a total testament to the commitment and perseverance of probably 20 to 30 community residents over a 6-year period of time. You know, we are seeing more and more people of color coming to us with environmental science degrees. There are a number of programs throughout the country. A very strong one is at University of Michigan, where they have had an environmental justice major within the School of Natural Resources for, I don't know, 15 or more years. So there are more and more students of color coming out with those kinds of degrees and with that kind of commitment to creating a healthier environment in this world, on this planet.